So we did internet censorship in China, and I focused on the history of internet censorship. The beginnings of censorship. So the Tiananmen Square protest of 1989, student-led protests that demanded democracy, the right to free press, and the right to free speech. So the military attempted to suppress the crowds and later shot at protesters. Then the Chinese government began to censor all press related to the incident. And when the internet became more widely used in 1996, the government was supporting the use of internet through internet cafes. And in 1997, Beijing started to criminalize posts that were deemed harmful to national security. In 1998, Lin Hai, a software engineer, gave 30,000 Chinese emails to a democracy-based magazine. And then the Golden Shield was implemented in the late 1990s, which allowed for the government to block IP addresses and censor data that was coming in or being sent out. So Fan Binxing created the Golden Shield, and he was named the father of the Great Firewall. The 2000s, so there's more increased internet censorship. In the 2000s, they implemented Order Number 292, which forced internet providers to follow censorship laws. In 2002, Beijing blocked Google, and they implemented the Public Pledge on Self-Discipline for China's internet industry in 2002. So companies such as Yahoo had to sign the pledge to promote patriotic observance of law, equitableness, trustworthiness, and honesty. And in 2004, universities had to have internet commentators who reported posts that did not follow the law. But still, citizens are posting about local corrupt officials. And then at the end of Hu Jintao's presidency, citizens were using the internet as a way to state their views on the corruption of government officials. So moving into Xi Jinping's presidency, in 2012, the Communist Party wanted to focus on how they could alter the internet to focus on their own ideals for the party and the country, and wanted to prevent foreign influence and members of the party to align with party values. In 2013, they implemented the 7 baselines, which was created to limit the amount of material online. So they were able to shut down accounts that were not following the law. In 2015, they implemented the Great Canon, which has the ability to alter and change internet content. And then the government began to target people who had many followers on social media accounts that could disrupt the party agenda, and around 2 million people employed in China to monitor the internet for harmful content. So what does this mean for China's future? So there's 2 main questions. If the Chinese economy will continue to be a powerful force if the internet is increasingly controlled, so it's limiting the movement of information, prevents economic growth, and also how will the leadership in the Chinese government be able to keep their credibility if they're preventing the flow of information? So that's my part.
So then I will talk about examples of internet censorship in China. Internet censorship is regarded as the most pervasive and sophisticated censorships in the world. The Chinese government blocks website content and monitors individuals' internet access. As required by the Chinese government, major internet platforms and messaging services in China establish elaborate self-censorship mechanisms. Although censorship affects the whole country, it does not affect China's special administrative regions, such as Hong Kong and Macau. These regions enjoy a high degree of autonomy in displaying one country, 2 systems principle. The system for blocking sites and articles is referred to as the Great Firewall of China. According to a Harvard study conducted in 2002, at least 18,000 websites were blocked from within the country, and the numbers are continuing to increase. Banned sites including YouTube, Facebook, Google services, Twitter, Dropbox, Foursquare. And the first example I will introduce is Winnie the Pooh. In July 2017, the character Winnie the Pooh was blocked on Chinese social media sites following the spread of a meme in which photographs of President Xi and President Obama were compared to the Pooh Bear and Tiger. Also, the photographs of President Xi and Japan's Prime Minister Shinzo Abe shaking hands were compared to the Pooh Bear and the IO. The reasons for why Chinese censors blocked these pictures in China maybe was because that they would not tolerate any ridicule of their country's leader. Moreover, they do not want their beloved children's character becoming a kind of online euphemism for the Communist Party's General Secretary. The second example is Big Yellow Duck. The Big Yellow Duck is a nickname given to a series of giant floating rubber duck sculptures designed by a Dutch artist. In June 2013, the phrase was banned by Chinese censors because someone photoshopped these giant rubber ducks into the famous Tiananmen photograph. The Big Yellow Duck picture is in reference to a parody of the iconic image of the tanks in the Tiananmen Square. Since the censors think it is a disrespect and irony for the dignity of the Tiananmen Square, they banned it online in China. The last example I will introduce is the letter N. In February 2018, China Communist Party announced that they would abolish term limits on the presidency, which means that the President Xi Jinping will remain in his power without time limits. Because of the dissatisfaction by people online, there are a lot of terms like incapable ruler, I oppose, and something like that appearing on the internet. But the censors finally choose to block the letter N online for a period of time. Many people were not sure about the reasons why they choose to block the letter N. Maybe it is because the letter N is a signifier for an unknown quantity, which can refer to Xi Jinping's unknown amount of terms. And that's all the things I want to say.
Okay, I'm focusing on like comparison between the censorship of internet, like between China and the Western world. So the US would be a nice example from the Western world. So China is like, as we all know, it's a socialist country, and US is like a capitalist country in political aspect. And in China, there's only one party, which is the Chinese Communist Party, and it has been mentioned before, like China is actually in kind of two system for Hong Kong and Taiwan area. So it's like called multi-party cooperation and political consolidation system. And in US, there's like mainly two parties. One is the Democratic Party, and the other one is Republican Party. And in China, it's like, as we all know, China has never like used a way of electing or voting for chairman or president. And in America, it's like election for their president. Actually, it's rare for Chinese like government to use social media or anything to publish something on internet. But as we all know, during this time, President Trump is always like posting Twitter and something on the internet, and so like everyone could see his opinion, his thinking. There are like both advantages and disadvantages of censorship of internet in China. The advantage would be like people can't say bad words about the party, or people would never like spread their bad ideas or something to influence others' minds. So, but the disadvantage is like, as we've like mentioned before, it's crazy that your account would be blocked if you say like some words about the president or something. And it's like also crazy that there is a social media app like called WeChat in China, but if you are like sending a picture of President Xi or something in WeChat, your account would be blocked or something. It's crazy, but in US this will never happen, and you could do anything you want. Also, it's the principle of power distribution in China and US were totally different. In China, it's like centralism and democratic. In US, it would be like tripartite political system. So the power is distributed to 3 different departments. So there are actually good things and bad things about the censorship in China, but I believe our party has their own opinion and their reasons to make the decisions to block those like Google or YouTube or something. So it's kind of different between Chinese censorship and American censorship in political aspects. That's all.
Internet censorship in China today is worse than ever before. According to the Freedom on the Net 2019 annual report, China has the least free internet of any country in the world, a title which it has now held for 4 consecutive years. People's freedom of expression, privacy, and access to information are all being suppressed. According to the report, the extent of the censorship has been increasing and has been the most active over the past year. Some of the things which have led to this spike in censorship include the 30th anniversary of the Tiananmen Square massacre, persistent anti-government protests in Hong Kong, and an ongoing trade war with the United States. China has censored information related to these topics as well as many others through directly removing the content they disagree with, banning online profiles of users who contradicted state dogma, and sometimes even imprisoning those who attempt to subvert censorship. Ordinary users of WeChat, China's most popular instant messaging app, increasingly face detention and prosecution, among others who were jailed during 2019. The moderator of a popular WeChat account that shared news from outside China was sentenced in July to 2 years in prison. A professor from Guangdong province was jailed for 3.5 years after posting images related to the banned Falun Gong spiritual movement. And a 22-year-old Tibetan monk from Sichuan province was arrested for expressing concern over Beijing's policies that are reducing use of the Tibetan language. The harsh punishments the Chinese government is capable of imposing have led to increasing self-censorship among its citizens. The risk of losing one's personal WeChat account is particularly terrifying to most citizens due to how critical the app is to everyday life in China. Without WeChat, a Chinese citizen could not only face themselves unable to communicate with other citizens, but also be limited in their ability to do basic tasks from banking to ordering food. With the threat of losing access to this essential app, many citizens in China find themselves in fear of their own government. In the face of these extreme levels of censorship, Chinese citizens have been trying to find ways to work around the government's controls. The most prevalent way Chinese citizens have resisted censorship has come in the form of blockchains. A blockchain is a secure database that's stored in a distributed set of computers. Every addition to the database must be digitally signed, making clear who's changing what and when. Decentralized blockchains allow for the free spread of communication. Blockchain users are able to communicate in their own private network without the ability of the Chinese government to interfere. One particularly striking example of blockchain's use to subvert the government took place on April 23rd of last year. The story of a Peking University former student who had committed suicide in 1998 was saved on a blockchain. This student was sexually assaulted and harassed by a university professor. The story detailed how the university had attempted to hide the sexual misconduct. This story was blocked by Chinese censors on social networking sites. However, when the letter was posted to a blockchain, the Chinese government was unable to stop its spread. Unfortunately, China has responded to blockchains and is attempting to curb their ability to spread information freely. Starting in February, a new regulation of the Cyberspace Administration of China requires users to provide real names as well as national ID card numbers or mobile phones to use blockchains. Law enforcement must be able to access data posted on the blockchain when necessary. Additionally, blockchain service providers are required to keep relevant records about transactions and other relevant information and report illegal use to authorities. They also need to prevent the production, duplication, publication, and dissemination of contents that are banned by Chinese laws. These new regulations threaten to eliminate the ability of blockchains to function without government intervention. In order to combat blockchain use, China's government has adopted a variation of the blockchain model in which they can actively regulate and monitor who is doing what on the network. The ability of the Chinese government to censor their citizens and control what they see is terrifying. The development of China's censorship ability showcases how powerful governments may control their citizens. Censorship in China is not only concerning to Chinese citizens themselves, but all people of the world as we continue to rely on the internet for information and communication.